to Beyond the Gate, our Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood podcast. I'm Megan.
And I'm Meg.
And today we're talking about episode 17, Cold Flame.
In this episode, summary, freed by an unlikely liberator, Ross's escape is interrupted by Mustang. Even those most loyal to the Flame Alchemist are shaken by the controversial action he takes against the accused killer of Maes Hughes.
Yes, and this episode covers manga chapters 35, The Sacrificial Lamb, chapter 36, Alchemist in Distress, and a little bit of chapter 37, The Body of a Criminal.
Yeah, we can just jump right in to the episode. Don't have anything extra to talk about this week. Starts out with Ross is being interrogated about Hughes' death, and it kind of seems like everything is stacked against her. She's trying to defend herself, but the bullet came from a .45 caliber, and that's what she carries. She had submitted a requisition form for extra ammunition. She was seen at the scene of the crime. And as we know, that is kind of true because Envy disguised himself as her. But I feel like only briefly. But
Yeah.
And then she was also, her alibi is that she's visiting family, and apparently family cannot serve as a reliable alibi, which honestly, like, I kind of get it, but also like.
But still, if they're the only ones that can, verify her story, then you have to at least bring them in for questioning.
Yeah.
And get somebody to see if they're lying. Because if they're trying to protect their daughter, then they should be able to have somebody, who's really good at interrogations, break the truth out of them.
Maybe,
I don't know.
Or interrogate them too much and they lie.
Yeah, but anyway, there are people who can defend her though, besides family.
Yeah. Yep. And that's Armstrong. He tries to visit to, I don't know, I don't think he has actually any hard evidence, but he's her superior officer, she worked under him, and he's like a character reference, basically, I think.
Which is strange, because in the manga, he's actually the one doing the interrogating when she's in the cell. You can tell the whole thing is still rigged, but he's trying to act in her best interest, even though the other officers over him are definitely pulling strings.
Yeah. I think, honestly, I could see it happening both ways. Him interrogating, he is a very loyal soldier. So
yeah,
he would do his job. True. But also, I don't mind in the anime that he wasn't doing it.
Yeah, it's okay that they didn't have that in.
Yeah.
It's just very frustrating to watch the scene because it feels like the officers who are in charge of finding her innocent or guilty, it seems like they just want to brush this whole Hughes case away. Let's just get it over with, find the person who did it, and relax afterwards.
We can have a deeper discussion about that later. I had more to say, but I won't right now.
Okay.
And then besides Armstrong, Rosh also tries to visit her, and she also is kind of turned away, and he had a report saying why she fired her gun, he had written up, and they kind of ignored it. And he basically can corroborate what she's saying, but they won't let him. And Armstrong basically said, well, it seems like they're trying to frame her.
Gee, you think?
Yeah. No way. But then we move to Ed and Alan Winry. They're just chilling in their hotel room. Winry is cleaning Al, and she's noticing a lot of scratches on him, and she's just oh, you guys have been through a lot, and it's kind of obvious. I also think it's really sweet that she's taking care of him. It's so sweet that both her and Ed like take such good care of Al.
Yeah. It's also really cute because Al's holding his helmet, his head in his hands, and he's just like scrubbing the top of it.
I like it. But while they're doing that, Ed is just kind of hanging out. He's very sad, obviously, because of Hughes and everything that's happened. And he does something surprising. He asks Winry for advice. He asks her what they should do next. And Winry is honest as usual. She tells him that first she's surprised that he would ask her. And then she's just admits that she's really scared about what might happen to them, especially with what happened with Hughes and everything. And she doesn't know what to do, because on the one hand she wants them to get their bodies back, but also she doesn't want them to die.
Yeah.
And then Al is like, "Oh, Winry, you're so nice," and she's like so embarrassed by it. She's like, "I'm not. What are you talking about?"
I'm always nice, she says as she smacks him with a wrench.
Yeah. And then we have just a brief scene with Pullman and Barry, and Pullman has got the newspaper and he sees that Ross has been accused, or I think even
convicted
at this point of Hughes' murder. And then he calls the military. And then kind of at the same moment, Al brings the newspaper to Ed and he sees that Ross has been convicted. And they rush out. But then we go to the prison and we see Ling talking with the guard and telling him that trying to convince him that he is only 15 years old. So he's the same age as Ed, which I was surprised by that when I first heard him. I think when we first met him, I was thinking he was maybe like 18, 19.
Yeah, I can see that.
I
had no idea what age he was, but him traveling alone, or not alone, he had two retainers. Like him traveling that distance, it made it a little bit more impressive when you find out he's 15.
Mm-hmm. Well, while they're chatting, somebody breaks into the prison, and it's Barry.
Yay!
He's back. He's back in action. The guards are like shooting at him, and of course nothing is happening. And like his head, I think, comes flying off, and he like totally scares the guards, and you just like see everybody running.
Yeah, it's great though, because as they're shooting, he goes lame, lame, lame. He's not impressed, and he's also just knocking people out. He's under orders not to kill.
Yes, which he's an interesting character, because like most bad guys, like if you like, okay, we're gonna let you free, but you can't do this thing, they usually do that thing. Yeah, but he actually is following
I feel
orders.
like he's the kind of guy who gets into trouble when he's bored. And if he's told to do something and like he's on board with the thing and like somebody gives him specific instructions, he'll follow it to the letter just because somebody told him to. And because it's like, oh yeah, it's a great plan. I'll do it. Not happy with everything, but I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's nuts.
Yeah. He is. But I love it. And then, so after the guards like go running off, he runs by Ling, and Ling convinces him to free Ling. And I think like the thing that got Barry to do it was that he mentioned that he's from Xing, which is interesting. But there's no like all he says is that he's from Xing, and there's like no other like, oh, you're from Xing, I want you to do this or something. Like he just
no discussion. He's got something in mind, but he doesn't say it.
Yep. after he frees Ling, then they go for Ross. And at first Barry's like, you've been accused of killing Hughes. I don't know. He lays it out for her. He's like, you've been accused of killing Hughes. You can either stay here and get killed, or run away, escape with us.
Yeah.
And
in the manga, when Barry tells her what she's, been convicted for, which apparently she didn't know she'd already been convicted.
Yeah.
When he tells her this, she's like, no, it's not true. And he looks at her and says, I believe you. You don't have the eyes of a killer. And that's a phrase that will come up later in the show. We'll get into that later, but I thought it was interesting that he took the time to really look at her and to assure her that he knew she was telling the truth.
She decides to go with them. She decides to escape.
Yes,
of course.
Sorry, I should have interrupted sooner. And Ross's line in the manga when he's like, "All right, let's get out of here. Let's escape." She's obviously scared, as anyone would be, but she says, "Women should be strong." And Barry goes, "Right on, sister." Barry's making it very difficult for me to hate him, because usually I try to I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna like a villainous character, and this show keeps making me like villains. I don't know why.
I don't feel the same way. I like to like villains. I knew, like, the first time we met Barry, I was like, oh, he's an interesting guy. I like him.
I don't know. I feel like if I can't align with a character's morals, I usually try to steer away from them.
I don't know. I like to, even if I don't agree with them, I like to try to understand them. And I don't know. There's always something redeemable. Usually, you can always find something redeemable about someone, for the most part, except for, at least in this show, Shao Tucker. There's nothing redeemable about that guy. But
no, never. Name one person who likes that character. I dare you. Listeners, if you like him, you might not want to comment that, because you will get bashed.
I don't think anybody likes him.
No.
But I don't know. I like villains, and without villains, there wouldn't be any heroes. You gotta appreciate them for what they are.
Okay. Well, this show definitely changed my viewpoints on, I usually can sympathize with most characters, but yeah, this show definitely made me go, I think I can say I like the villains, even if I don't agree with anything they practiced.
Yeah. Anyways, Ross has escaped. And the military is after her, of course, and we see Mustang is also walking the streets. And then Ling and Barry and Ross, they meet up. They run into Ed and Al, and Ed and Al, of course, are like shocked. Me like, what are you guys like? What a interesting.
They all know each other.
Yeah. And I love. And Barry's like, I think he says to Al, "You're that guy."
And they point at each other like the Spider-Man meme.
Yep. And Ed tries to talk to Ross and be like, what is this about, you killing Hughes? But Barry attacks him, and she runs off. And she actually runs into Mustang, and all we see is him snap his finger, and then a huge burst of flames, which kind of distracts Ed and Al, and then Barry and Ling, they run away. And then Ed and Al, they come around the corner, and they see Mustang has burned Ross to a crisp. And we specifically see that, that she's wearing her prisoner
dog tags. Or prisoner, not dog tags, prisoner tags.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember watching this for the first time and thinking, nothing can be as gruesome as the Nina episode. Yep. No imagery can scare me more than that. And then we see this charred body, and I go, oh my word, it's animated, but it's terrifying.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty terrible. And Ed is very angry, and he's like, why'd you do this, Colonel? And he tries to come at Roy and like grab him, and Roy just punches Ed, like, does not hold back.
That was hard to watch.
Yeah, it was. It's really sad. And also it's just like Ed just saw his friend. He didn't see it, but his friend had just been murdered. And he just found out about Hughes being killed. And then Mustang, like, somebody, I wouldn't say he necessarily, like, they're not friends, but I think there's a relationship there.
There's a
like,
level of trust between them.
Yeah, he just punches him.
And for the audience too, because up to this point you start thinking, Roy's a cool guy, I kind of like him. And then this happens, and you don't know how to feel. And he punches Ed, and then you really don't know how to feel.
Yeah, and you really think about it, he punches a 15-year-old kid. Like,
yeah.
You think you know Roy, and then you're like, wait.
You think what? You know a guy, and then he punches the protagonist.
Yeah. But then he, well, at first he's like, you don't threaten a superior officer, but then he kind of changes his tune a little bit. He apologizes about not telling Ed about Hughes. But then he kind of hits Ed with this line, you do not argue against orders or ask for explanations, just follow them. That's what it means to be a soldier.
Yeah, I still didn't know how to feel at that point, but him saying that line made my mind go down a track of, like, maybe he doesn't want to do most of the things that he's ordered to do. There's something here that hopefully, and we know that they get into later with his psychology, basically. But yeah, it is hard to believe that he was just acting on orders when you know he was invested in the Hughes case like he was.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's like what he says when the rest of the military shows up to investigate the crime scene. There's, I don't know, I think this superior officer, I don't remember what his first name is, but it's Douglas. I'm pretty sure. And he kind of accuses Roy of, well, at first he's like, this is pretty gruesome, and Roy's like, well, I'm just carrying out the orders. Yeah. But then he also accuses Roy of freeing Ross so he could kill her.
So he could do the honors of killing the person who supposedly killed his best friend.
Yep. And I don't think he really says anything. He was just like, I didn't do that.
His line was very harsh, but he said something like, the orders were to shoot to kill if she resisted. She resisted, so I killed her. He just like states it like that.
Yeah. And then Ed and Al, of course, are there. They're just, I don't know, I think they're just like sitting against the wall. And I don't know, Ed's eyes, they just got me. They just look, he just looks so young, and
he has like an intense look as he's staring at Roy, but there's also deep hurt somewhere in that. Just very impressive in a drawing to get that across in animation.
Yep. Then we go to the coroner's office, and Ed and Al and Armstrong and Mustang are all there, and Ed says it's his fault that Hughes is dead, and Armstrong, I don't know, tells him that the murder wasn't his doing. He trying to comfort him and assure him it wasn't his fault.
Someone else's actions are not your doing.
Yeah. And then the coroner confirms that it was Ross. They were able to confirm it through her dental records. And the doctor is kind of like, this was very, like, such a cruel act, and that he went too far this time. And I think, like, that's kind of everybody's feeling in this episode.
They're glaring at him.
Yeah, that it was, like, too much. Even if she killed Hughes, like, it was excessive, and it's just it's like such a gruesome proof. it's such a gruesome death too. Like, I don't know, everybody is kind of judging Mustang for his actions. And even Armstrong, he talks with Mustang, and he's kind of like, well, I can't, like, Ross was like such a good soldier, but you did what you had to do, basically. But you can tell that he is very angry, and he also doesn't believe that Ross
did
it, but he still is. I don't know. He's a soldier. He's gonna follow orders. He's not gonna go against the military, which that would be very hard.
Hard position. Really tough.
But then Mustang tells Armstrong that he needs a break, tells him to go to the east. And I don't know, even when I was watching it the first time, it seems kind of cryptic. Like there's a meaning behind that. And then we go to Envy and Lust talking, and they're basically like recapping what happened with Mustang and how he killed Ross and everything. And Envy just kind of makes a comment that Mustang subordinates may not trust him anymore after what he's done. And then we see Hawkeye is asking for leave, which I think we're supposed to think that, like, she's asking for leave because of, what just happened. But
yeah, and she sort of slams the door like she's mad at him.
Yep, yeah, and Roy proves it. But then when she leaves, he's like smiling. So it's interesting. It's I don't know.
Something's happening.
Yeah, something is happening. On. Man, there's a lot of like very quick
cuts. Lots of them.
Because then we go to Ling and Barry. Barry's back with Pullman. And Ling has built a fire. He is both sending a smoke signal and cooking fish.
Always hungry.
Yes, and Lan Fan and Fu quickly find him, and then that's it for that scene.
Yeah.
Then we go back to Mustang, and he is calling Elizabeth. We don't know who that is, but he's being very flirty. And all the subordinates are like making comments like, "Oh, without Hawkeye around, like he's
irresponsible."
Yeah, he's irresponsible. He's not doing his job. And everyone's really annoyed. And then Roy says he's also going to take a break and he's going to go fishing, and he asks her to go with him. And he again has like a weird look on his face.
Like, care to join?
Yeah.
There's like every line he says in this episode, he says it with some kind of, there's some tone to it.
Mm-hmm.
Where when you listen, you go, what's up? What's up with this guy?
Yep. And then we go back to Ed. He's in his hotel room and with Winry and Al, and then all of a sudden they get a knock on the door, and it's Armstrong, and he punches Ed in the arm and says, "Oh, your arm is broken and you need to go to Risenbull to fix it." And he like picks him up and starts carrying him away, and he just like, he's leaving Al and Winry's there just like pointing at herself like,
it's like, she can fix it.
Yeah, I'm the mechanic. Like, what are you doing? And Ed looks very helpless.
He's being dragged. Like, Armstrong is so huge and Ed is so small. He just like picks him up and is carrying him under his arm. It's actually kind of cute.
And Armstrong like specifically tells Al that he has to stay here. And then after they leave Al and Winry, Armstrong says that he's taking Ed away because of orders from him. He doesn't say who, but then like it immediately cuts to Roy smiling. So we're like, well, it's obviously him. And then he's like, Roy says, "Everyone is out of the way." So what's gonna happen? We don't know. Or maybe we do.
Oh, everyone knows. We've seen this show before.
Yeah. And then the final scene is Envy again is talking with Lust, and he's figured out that Barry the Chopper was the one who freed Ross, but can't figure out where Barry's hiding because he's low on manpower. And then Lust says, oh, it's time to use him. And we see Barry the Chopper's body.
The man before he got stuffed in the armor.
Yes. And then the episode ends.
Yeah. So, for this episode, it's a little different. We don't have any voice actor notes. There are some people we could cover, but we felt that other episodes would be better for them. So instead of taking the time to do voice acting, we are going to take the time to catch up on the things that we were supposed to be tracking throughout all of these episodes. Emphasis on the supposed to be.
Yeah, we have not been doing that. So
it's hard to cover every single thing. So if you listeners hear that we missed one of our trackings, like if you remember an episode that we don't mention where something happened that we didn't cover, then let us know kindly, if you will. But yeah, so one of the things was we wanted to track whenever Ed destroys his gloves. And from looking back at our show notes, I calculated it's been about 3 times. And one of those times it was just his right glove because he destroyed it when making an arm blade. But usually it is both of the gloves. And I think those were episodes 5, 8, and 13 where he did that. We could be missing one. He might have done it in episode 1, but thinking back, I can't really remember. And that might have been before we decided to do the tracking like we were.
Yeah.
So if it was episode 1, please let us know. And then another thing was we wanted to track homunculi and when they die. So this one, we actually got quite a bit. Lust dies once in episode 10. Greed died once in episode 13. Greed died 15 times, plus when he was destroyed completely in episode 14.
Yes, and then 2 other things we wanted to track was whenever somebody transmuted a door. This actually has only happened once so far in episode 3, City of Heresy. Ed makes a door to escape Father Cornello. And we'll see if we keep tracking this, because I thought I remember that this happens like more than once, but it hasn't happened. It's only happened the one time so far. Mm-hmm. And then another thing we wanted to track was whenever somebody made a spear and then how long the spear lasted. So spend a few times. So in episode 1, Ed makes a spear. This one I realize we don't really see him make the spear. We just like see it come flying out of the sky. And then it actually doesn't really get destroyed. Ed just like turns it into a bat instead. But it lasts about 20 seconds. And then Ed again in episode 2, he makes a spear when he's taking his his alchemy exam. His state alchemist exam, and it lasts about 12 seconds, and it was destroyed by the Fuhrer. And then in episode 3, Ed again makes a spear when he's fighting like the lion chimera, and this time it lasts 11 seconds. And then we have like a kind of a long break. It's not till episode 12 when another spear is made, and this time it's made by Izumi, and this one is only lasts 10 seconds, and it is destroyed by Ed. So it's kind of funny because episode 2, 3, so it's like 12 seconds, 11 seconds, 10 seconds. They're progressively lasting less than fewer and fewer seconds. But I think it's kind of interesting. The first 3 episodes, Ed makes the spear, but then like he hasn't made one since. Like instead, he usually like makes his little sword arm. I think he's learning that the spears don't work so well.
He's more of a close combat fighter anyway.
Yeah, Yeah, I was thinking that too. It was like, the spear is definitely like
The longer reach
doesn't seem
weapon.
it doesn't seem like his style. I don't know. Like his fighting style that we've seen thus far. But that's what we are tracking so far. If we miss anything, let us know, and we will, if we remember, we will update you guys again.
Yeah.
On those things.
All right, and moving on to animation, I wanted to mention timing. There was a lot of setup and payoff in this episode. Quick cuts, like we mentioned before. There were quite a few witty jokes, which seems odd for such a gruesome episode, but that's what the show does, is always try to lighten the mood a little bit. And a lot of intense moments that led to the climax. And the intense close-ups to see the emotion in the characters' eyes. And to make emotion come through in the eyes, oftentimes the pupils will be dilated, or you can add or take away highlights, or the coloration would be different. So there's a lot of that going on. Do you have scientific?
No.
There wasn't too much happening. Unless you want to say how hot a fire needs to be to completely crisp a body like that instantly.
I don't know the answer to that, and that's a good thing.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah. Something that we wanted to discuss was kind of the innocent until proven guilty. Because in this episode, like, I don't know, it kind of seems like the military had already made up their mind about Ross's guilt.
Mm-hmm.
And they didn't really give her a chance to defend herself.
And even Salem witch trials a little bit. Totally different concept here, but sort of like they had it set in their minds so concretely that those girls were guilty that they didn't even listen to reason, and they believed false witnesses and stuff.
Yeah, kind of a different situation, but similar like outcomes, and also like this also reminds me, it's because like the homunculi were kind of orchestrating behind the scenes. It's not quite the same, but like when something horrible happens, like, you know, Hughes was a decorated he's really important, you know, he's a military officer, and people, it seemed like they just wanted to find someone to put the blame on, and it doesn't really matter if she was guilty or not. Like they just needed to find someone to put the blame on and put it behind them. And I think
Needed a scapegoat.
Yeah, that's something that we see in real life, where something really horrible happens and you just want to find someone to blame.
Yeah.
And whether or not they actually did it. But definitely the innocent until proven guilty is very important.
Yes, yeah.
I feel like it's very important, but it's not often carried out. Like,
yeah. Well,
like people often make, even myself, like I hear all the evidence and I'm like, okay, it seems like they probably did it.
Right.
You know.
I like looking at cases in courtrooms where it seemed like the person was guilty, you know, without a doubt, and they had all the evidence against them, but then just one little thing comes up and they uncover all this other stuff and a story starts to just unravel in front of them. I love hearing about that, because this person was saved from their fate by one thing that a smart lawyer picked up on or whatever. But unfortunately, there are a lot of cases that don't end in the innocent being proven innocent.
Yeah.
But anyway, moving on to
seriously, that's like us half the time. Like we end our conversations with
morbid. Yeah.
Sad things.
Anyway, moving on to the story elements analysis. We can talk about the climax of the story, even though this isn't really the climax for the whole series. You could say this episode is definitely a turning point. But a climax is when action is at its peak. The Hughes murder has led to this moment when Ross is accused and Mustang goes after her. Everything that has happened up to this point has been orchestrated by the homunculi. So it's like everything is starting to come together, but the characters aren't putting the pieces together in the correct way. And we as the audience know that there's more to the story.
I don't know. I was already invested in the show at this point, but definitely like I don't know. The show like keeps surprising you. Like
it challenges your expectations.
Like, it keeps having like twists and turns. You're like, oh, I didn't see that coming, and like, oh, there's another layer, to think about. But yeah, I even though like I don't know, this is a good episode. Again, like it wasn't like the most action packed or anything, but it was a good episode, and it definitely like you can see things are happening, so it gets you excited.
Yeah, get excited.
Snuck it in there.
You always do.
All right. Well, that's all we have for the episode. Megan, what was your favorite line?
Mine came from Envy, and I really can't do the voice because that's a hard voice to replicate. But Lust basically calls him useless because he wasn't able to find Barry the Chopper. So Envy fires back, "Don't blame this on me, you ugly hag. I'm short on manpower." When he bit back like that, it's funny.
I love like the homunculi are definitely a kind of
sassy.
Like yeah, and they're kind of like bickering siblings.
Yeah. Although I would never call my sister a hag.
Yeah. I feel like that's kind of an older term that people use.
Yeah. What was your favorite line, Meg?
Mine came from Ross when she's deciding to escape from prison. She's like, "I have no choice. Mom, Dad, please forgive me."
I love it.
Yeah. It honestly relatable.
Yep. All right. Well, what did we learn? What was the moral of this episode?
I think what we discussed, don't jump to conclusions, and people are innocent until proven guilty, and we should treat them as such.
Yes. Who pushed the story forward?
Barry. He rescued Ross and Ling, and without him, we wouldn't have had the confrontation with Mustang, and I doubt, I think what happened with Ross kind of pushed Mustang to start doing whatever he's doing. So yeah,
things are happening.
Barry. Yeah, it's kind of weird because he's such a weird character, but like you can't help but
people tend to like him though. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I was watching somebody doing a watch through, the reaction videos on YouTube, and Barry was one of his favorite characters. He's just like, I don't know, I like him. He's funny and he keeps showing up. I didn't think he would be this big of a deal. He wouldn't be a part of the series for long, but he is.
Yeah, it's awesome.
It's a way to go, Jerry Jewell. You inserted yourself into another important anime.
All right. Well, that's the end of the episode.
Thank you so much for listening.
Yes. We will be back next week with another episode.
All right. Bye.